Something very bizarre is taking place in Washington, D.C. that I would like to draw your attention to. Not sure if you're paying attention, but I would like to draw your attention to it because it is very bizarre, it is very weird, and I guess it gets to this kind of base level of politics that we're operating at. Trump tweets this. Section 230, which is a liability shielding gift from the United States to big tech, only companies in America that have it, corporate welfare, is a serious threat to our national security and election integrity. Our country can never be safe and secure if we allow it to stand. Therefore, if the very dangerous and unfair Section 230 is not completely terminated as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, I will be forced to unequivocally veto the bill when sent to the very beautiful Resolute desk. Take back America now. Thank you. Now, there is so much in this tweet that needs to be discussed. So right off the bat, Section 230. Now, 230 was in Donald Trump's crosshairs once before. And in this case, he is holding the National Defense Authorization Act hostage. I am fascinated by it right there by itself. By itself. These guys worship the military, Congress, and they keep giving them more and more money. At some point, it's going to get to $1 trillion. And when you include defense stuff, behind black budget stuff, it's well over $1 trillion. I'm just making a point that $40 billion. And for the first time in my lifetime, I'm seeing somebody saying, yeah, I'm going to use that as hostage. Not workers, not paychecks of, this particular demographic or something like that. No, he is holding the National Defense Authorization Act hostage. It's like, the Defense Act gets it, buddy. Now, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't necessarily care about this. But in this Defense Act, oddly enough, so 2020, there is a UFO task force bill set up in this. Money is appropriated for it. And if this goes all the way out to January into the new Congress, that money and that task force will no longer exist. It would have to be all done again. The money would have to be reappropriated for it again, and this time for a new Congress that may or may not be on board for it. In this very specific case, though, they were able to get this passed. And if Donald Trump vetoes this, that goes along with it. That's my own personal thing with that. Yes, that's selfish, but fair enough. That's where I am with that very specific point for my interest in this. But I'm just making the point that this is severe in regards to what he's going after. And that's something that I am unaware ever taken place before. Now, the way this is being explained right here, President Donald Trump has threatened to veto the annual National Defense Authorization Act unless the bill includes a repeal of Section 230. Now, Section 230 is a provision in the 1996 federal law that helps shield broad range of digital platforms and services from lawsuits from owner-created posts on their sites. The NDAA bill has passed in Congress for 59 years in a row. The current proposal includes 3% pay raise for U.S. troops and authorizes $740 billion for the national security programs in the 2021 fiscal year. 59 years. Think about that, though. Lockstep, dual party. They have basically said, yeah, we agree. Pass it on. The money keeps going up. We agree. Pass it on. We're not even at war. Money goes up. Pass it on. Hey, what about healthcare? We can't afford that. I'm sorry, we can't afford that. What about investing in our kids, ensuring that they can go to school and they're going to get great jobs and they're going to create the businesses of the future? Ugh, that's so expensive. We can't afford that. Can't afford that at all. Section 230 is basically allows you not to be blamed. Meaning, if you're Twitter or if you're Facebook and somebody puts something on your platform, let's say that's defamatory or pisses somebody off, You can't sue Twitter for that because Twitter is basically just a platform. They're just a billboard. They're just there showing the content. But therein lies the rub. They're not just a platform. They also have some level of discretion in regards to what they choose to show or what they don't show. And that is where Donald Trump is getting pissed off. What's interesting here is the flip in the dynamic between Democrats and social media. They want censorship. And Trump and social media, who wants it wide open and not to be called out on basically fabrication and lies. It's such a bizarre dynamic. And these guys are basically flipped from 2016 to 2020 in regards to their tenor and their thinking and what they're advocating, what they're saying is wrong, what they're accusing the other of, and all of this other stuff. It has literally flipped. And I want to talk about it. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity for allowing me to do so. I want to be very clear. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you're subscribed. I think YouTube has been basically dropping off subscribers from this channel. So definitely make sure you're still subscribed and make sure you hit the bell so you can be notified whenever I just pop up and do a show. Doing the news. But on this very specific case, I do think people should lavish a little bit of attention on this. So let's put the NDAA to the side for the moment. That's one aspect of this, that the military budget is the thing that Donald Trump is willing to put a bullet in order to make his point about Section 230. So that's the first point. The fact that he's about to shoot a sacred cow. That's weird in and of itself. Let's step into that, though. In 2016, Democrats argued Russia, Vladimir Putin, dispensed the hounds. And those hounds amounted to Facebook and Twitter ads. The majority of which taking place after the election. And we're talking about, like, let's say 40,000. I don't even think it was that much, like $50,000, 56,000, I believe. But whatever that number is very low. Facebook and Twitter ads, the majority of which that took place after the election. And Democrats claim that this was some kind of, it was a troll farm, but claimed that it was some kind of vector of Putin's foreign policy to hit Democrats and to put a knife in Democrats because they hated Hillary Clinton so much. I mean, this is the nonsense that these guys were peddling. And they said it was hacked. They kept using that term. They basically explained Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump as being an undermining of the U.S. electoral system, that Vladimir Putin was able to influence our electoral system in that way, putting Facebook and Twitter ads, the overwhelming majority of which took place after the election. Hillary Clinton had $1 billion, including millions of dollars invested in Twitter trolls that would go online and say bad things about Bernie Sanders, or for that matter, say bad things about Donald Trump. Yes, she had to pay people to do that. That's how magnificently unpopular she was. But they don't accept the unpopularity is why she lost, especially not to reality shows. No, had to be Trump and Russia. Had to be something else out there that reached into our politics and lifted up the skirt of Lady Liberty. That's what it had to be. Because in their mind, they can't conceive of a scenario of hope and change not being delivered, of Hillary Clinton not being liked all that much, and if we're being honest, have an entire platform that's basically just against Donald Trump. Somebody who, while people might consider him incompetent, definitely considers him change, and they wanted change, even if it was unpredictable, as in Trump. I guess my point is, they argued, basically, that Facebook and Twitter, through what's the other company, I can't think of, Cambridge Analytica, that basically social media was the thing that did Hillary Clinton in. And so what did they do? They had all of these meetings. They dragged these guys to D.C. and they browbeat them. And they said, you need more censorship. You must censor more content. That's what you need to do. What type of content? Of course, it was going to be content that was against the interests of their political class, against the interests of Democrats, against the interests of Republicans, especially if it's telling something that goes beyond the mainstream narrative, that mainstream narrative often just coming from stenographers without the necessary, let's say, dissection. They want censorship. Democrats. Now, flip this to 2020, and you get Donald Trump screaming against Section 230. And he's screaming against it because he's saying, you guys are censoring too much content. You guys are saying my stuff is lying, and I don't particularly like it. Now, this is somewhat of an inversion of what Democrats want. Democrats want more censorship. Trump is basically saying you should allow everything. And the fact that you're not allowing everything means you're making decisions. Those decisions are having consequences in our electoral system. Now, in the way that Democrats say the Russians intervene with Facebook and Twitter ads, Donald Trump is arguing that basically not showing the Hunter Biden stuff, not showing this other allegations and information basically amounts to electoral interference because they are making a choice not to show something that they have no way to know whether it's true or false. You've made a choice. And in making that choice, would people have made a different choice in the election if they could see the information? Probably not, but we don't know. And from Trump's perspective, is that and can that be considered electoral interference? After all, you weren't showing it because there was an election. And if you weren't showing it specifically because there was an election, and let's be honest, because it goes against somebody who you believe you want politically, you played all sorts of information against Donald Trump. But here, during the election, you specifically chose not to show something that you didn't know whether or not it was true or false. You made a choice, and you made a choice based upon the election. Trump is arguing that is electoral interference. In a similar way that Democrats were arguing that Facebook and Twitter ads amounted to electoral interference. It's just an inversion, but basically amounts to the same thing. It's a weird, interesting way to look at it, but basically both are arguing the inversion of each other, almost in equal measure. They're basically arguing the same thing. Trump is basically saying there was electoral interference from these Twitter, and we need to open it up. Democrats, 2016, was arguing there was too much information, and we need to close it up. Democrats screaming for censorship, political reasons. Trump screaming to open it up for political reasons. How bizarre is that? How bizarre is that? So weird. Yeah, I'll leave this here. I just wanted to point to that and point to how these guys have basically worked their way into basically the same politics, just kind of inverted, like the negative of one another, like a particle and anti-particle. It's so strange. Trump is not going to back down on this. I mean, basically from his standpoint, he cannot walk away from it. And just so we're clear, Section 230 does allow the companies to do what they're doing. Donald Trump is complaining he's just want to be able to lie without people pushing back on his lie. He's just pissed off about it. Democrats were pissed off by information coming out that they didn't necessarily like about Hillary Clinton, like the WikiLeaks. It wasn't even the fact that the information was true. It was the fact that the information came out, meaning the information was true. It wasn't lies. That information from WikiLeaks was flat fact true. They tried to make the article that this troll farm was putting out information, and that pretty much tanked the election. I'm saying, though, that the WikiLeaks data was flat fact true. Section 230 does allow these companies to make discretionary decisions like that. The catch becomes whether the decisions are favoring a particular candidate, meaning in the way that they would let anything pass for Trump. But if it went against Biden, not so much. It was almost as if they were trying to make up for what happened in 2016 by erring on the side of, let's say, caution, but ultimately that side of caution basically cuts against Trump's interests. It's very interesting. Just to give you a heads up on Section 230, I'm just going to read this part. This is Rico of Vox, actually. Fearing the Communications Decency Act will stop the burgeoning internet in its tracks, and mindful of court's decisions, the representative, Senator Wyden, now Senator Wyden, and Chris Cox authored an amendment that said, quote, interactive computer services, unquote, were not responsible for what their users posted, even if those services engaged in some moderation of that content. The companies, in other words, were platforms, not publishers. Now, understand what that means. You could put something on my site, and I'm not going to be charged for it. But imagine what would happen if you were charged for it. Some random person puts something inflammatory, and then they charge you. So what does that mean from the standpoint of your actions? It means that you are not going to allow people to publish basically inflammatory stuff, which means you're going to limit, you're going to curtail, you're going to err on the side of caution. And the burgeoning internet services, if they don't necessarily get hit with lawsuits, you would have a fundamentally different system. You would have a system with restrained speech where people can't necessarily say what they want to say, where lawsuits abound, all of that stuff. That stuff would basically have inhibited the internet as we know it today. What Donald Trump is doing, what that means afterwards, we have no idea. Meaning, if you got rid of 230, these companies wouldn't be here. The Facebook wouldn't exist. Twitter wouldn't exist. At the very least, it wouldn't exist in the way that it's set up and structured and in the way we communicate with each other. YouTube wouldn't exist in this way. I would not be able to get on here and have this particular channel if Section 230 was gone. So I hope you understand Donald Trump, maybe he feels like he's going after these sites. And to some degree, he is. Because again, I don't know what Twitter looks like if Section 230 is gone. And again, the catch here is Section 230 does allow them leeway to make changes. Now, what Trump may get out of this may not be a repeal of Section 230, but what he may get is some alteration to it that affixes the language in some way that allows people that he wants to get more leeway in regards to the way that the speech and so forth is done. Now, that's assuming that they even give in. I mean, they may push it to the next term. The Defense Authorization Act is somewhat of a big deal, so I don't necessarily know if they can push it to the next term, but they might. But from Donald Trump's standpoint, if he gets anything out of it, he would consider it a win. And the attack on 230 is basically an attack, a direct attack on Facebook and Twitter and social media companies. But it's not just Facebook and Twitter, it's all of the social media companies. If there is any social media at all, those companies at that point will be held liable to whatever the people say on the platform. It is a dramatic change. That's why I'm saying he's going nuclear in regards to going after these guys. But up to this point, it is speculative on whether or not Twitter or Facebook has gone beyond the pale. And by just the reading of the law, it seems as if these guys have a certain degree of leeway to make changes and make those decisions. So this is not, Donald Trump is right. Donald Trump is not right. And again, like typical, he's looking out for his own personal interests. Let's take a look at this for 1 second before we head up. Section 230, which is a liability shielding gift. It's not a gift. It's not a gift. The internet would not exist as we know it without it. The whole point of it was to allow the internet to flourish and allow the internet to grow and for these companies to be able to get bigger and so forth. The whole point was growth. The whole point was to shield it from certain liabilities that would not inhibit its growth. If you wanted to go after somebody for saying something bad about you, then you go after the individual. You don't go after the platform. The platform is just the platform. You can contact the platform, get them to take it down, yes. But the platform is not necessarily liable for the content or the comment. If that is gone, then the platform is responsible. And how do you have a platform if it's responsible for those things? So it's not a gift in that sense. It's more so, it's like saying a nail is a gift to a hammer. No, it's a tool. It's one of those things that's necessary for the thing to work. It's just a conceptual tool. Corporate welfare. It's not corporate welfare. That's stupid. It's a serious threat to our national security and election integrity. Now, again, Democrats argued this in 2016 that these guys were a national security threat. Now, Trump is arguing it. Democrats are saying perfect election. Trump is saying no, 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 national security threat, because they were inhibiting what was coming out from a standpoint of information. They were making choices on whether or not that information was true and false. And they were preventing stuff that I wanted to come out. Stuff that, by the way, they didn't know whether it was true or false. They wanted to prevent it. Same argument. Different year. Our country can be safe and secure. Let's see. Therefore, it's very dangerous and unfair. 230 is not completely terminated. Now, this goes with the idea that the tech companies have a dog in the hunt, that they err on a particular side. And in this particular election, they did. They erred on the side that whatever Trump was putting out or Giuliani was putting out was wrong. And they didn't know whether it was true or false. And I got to be honest, a lot of it looks true. So, look, I just thought this was interesting. So I'll leave it here. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I am going to say subscribe.